accepting of it's just great entertainment.
Yeah.
So I want to get to this like later because I don't want to interrupt the story, but like I think one of the coolest things that I've learned now, especially different from when I was a kid watching wrestling, is like how aware the average wrestling fan is of what's going on. And it's become really meta.
It's a click away. Yeah, it's a click away. All the information.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about our business is, as interesting as the characters we put on TV, right? So there's a moment where there's some people that are just interested in what they see on TV. There are some people that are just as fascinated, if not more so, with what happens behind the scenes. The sort of the who that person is in real life, the politics of it. They make up their own stories in some manner of the things that are going on. Well, I know that guy hates that guy and they don't get along at all. And, you know, we will even perpetuate that through the internet and things like that, where it might not have anything to do with the story that is happening on the show, but we'll perpetuate that partially.
Well,
and you know.
As we get into this, I think that's important that you brought that up because I think that's a huge game change that I hope you get credit for in wrestling, and blurring the lines of what's happening backstage and on stage.
So part of that translates into or relates to this story of what you're talking about. So that group, the Clique, we're all very tight backstage. It's not like common knowledge. I wouldn't say everybody knows it, but there's a section of fans that at that time, you know, this is before the internet, are really beginning to understand what goes on behind the scenes and who's really tight and who's not. These guys are friends and that guy isn't, and they don't like this guy and there's politics with that, whatever.
Right.
So Kevin Nash and Scott Hall make a deal with WCW to leave.
The rival league, who's throwing money around at this point, signing away a bunch of people.
There's a thing, a Monday Night War going on. Vince is coming off of trials and all this stuff where the business is sort of down. WCW goes on the attack, and one of the things that they do is they start really coming after talent with big checks and whereas Vince sort of puts you into a position where you are participating in the revenue of the business. So if we went to Madison Square Garden, it was sold out, the gate is this, there's a percentage of that gate that gets paid to talent, that's divvied up amongst the talent, right? There's percentages. So if business is good, you make more money. If business is down, you make less money.
And that's why you protect the business.
Yes. And so WCW, they were just paying guys money.
Yeah, guaranteed.
So, you know, Scott Hall decides he's leaving. Shortly thereafter, Kevin Nash goes through this big thing where he doesn't want to leave, but they're offering him so much money. And, you know, our schedule in WWE was at that point in time, we were working, you know, 200, 250 days a year. We were on the road all the time.
It's physically grueling.
Yes, just nonstop.
Just the travel wears out a comedian. Like, you travel to sit on a stool on stage. I'm exhausted. You guys are flying through cages.
And in the same business, right, like the best part of what you do is when you're on that stage, when you're in that ring. And that other 23 hours and 20 minutes of the day is the shit you put up with to get to do your job.
Right.
Right. But guys are doing it. It's grueling, it's relentless. And, you know, Kevin gets into a place where they're offering ridiculous money, but he still doesn't want to go. And there's a moment where he tells me, right when he has to give the answer, I'm home, he calls me and he's like, yeah, I'm not going, I'm staying, I can't do it. And then like 2 days later, we're at TV and he's like, I just gave Vince my notice. I'm like, I thought you weren't going. And he's like, basically my wife said, you don't either take that money. I'm not raising this kid by myself with that schedule anymore. Like, you take that money.
Oh, so they shrunk the schedule for WCW.
Yeah, WCW was working, you know, they were mostly just doing TV. You know, they were doing some live events, right? But probably the schedule was half.
Oh, wow. How are they able to give out bigger checks if they weren't doing as much?
That's why they're out of business.
Some good backing.
Yeah, it's, you know, it was Ted Turner, it was TBS, right? A lot of money, and there's a certain point in time where, like, when you're just paying a lot of money and the revenue's not coming in, like, well, you know,
it's a time bomb.
You know, any fool can run a business in the red. It'll take a genius to do that. Right? So, Kevin and Scott are leaving. Sean and I are staying. There's another guy in the group, Sean Waltman, but he isn't at Madison Square Garden. But we're doing a show at Madison Square Garden. It's their last time at Madison Square Garden. They're leaving shortly thereafter. And Sean comes to me during the day and he's like, hey, I mentioned something to Vince about us all going out at the end of the show and having a moment together. And I said, what did Vince say? And he was like, yeah, I guess if that means a lot to you or something like that. And so it was kind of very vague. But what was weird about it was
It's funny. That's not how.
so what's weird about it is to the business is Scott and I are going to wrestle earlier in the show in like a street fight.
Yeah.
And I beat Scott and the whole thing. And then Sean and Kevin are going to work a cage match for the WWE at the time, I think WWE title, whatever, in the close of the show. So us coming out there to have a moment together is sort of contrary to the show.
Of course.
Yeah.
And but when the time comes to do this, Scott and I wrestle earlier. We have this knockdown, drag out street fight, and then now Kevin and Sean go in there, and we're kind of at the end of the show. And there's the way the Garden was set up in the past. There's a side vom that like guys would always stand at to watch the show. Vince would stand at this curtain. His dad would stand at that curtain, right? That's where they would watch from. And Scott and I were standing there, and they kind of get to the end of the match, and Sean is kind of looking back at us. And Scott says to me, like, are we supposed to go out there? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. And then Scott looks at Vince and he goes, are we supposed to go out there? And he's like, kind of like, we're all unsure. And then Scott's like, fuck it, I'm going. And he just goes, right? And I think in his mind, like,
I'm quitting.
like yeah, I'm out of here anyways, right?
There's no cost to him.
Yeah, fuck it, I'm going. And I'm like, well, fuck. Then they were kind of looking, waving back at me. And I'm like, shit, all right, here I go. So we go out there. And we have this moment. And I mean, the Garden's sold out and they go ballistic.
So the people are happy to see you all acknowledge that you are friends and break the
It's
cake.
this crazy moment, right? Like it's this crazy moment of like, most people I believe at that time, probably in the Garden, especially New York, is so savvy to everything. Like they know we're all friends. They get it, right? And they know they're leaving. And this is like an incredible, real life moment.
First time in wrestling history this has happened, where you kind of break.
Probably
That's my understanding.
one of the big moments where it actually happens. So we do it. When we come back, everybody's gone. Like everybody. And like usually there's at the Garden, like there's people back there, the agents, all this. So we come back, everybody's gone. I'm like, that's not a good sign. But so Sean goes and talks to Vince, and Vince says, well, that was a lot different than what I thought it was going to be. And Sean said, hope I was okay. And he said, well, did that mean something to you? And Sean goes, meant the world to me. And he goes, then I'm okay with it. And we left. And we used to stay at the time we stayed in Newark and there's a place a diner that
Business is different now.
we all drive back. We would, if we were doing the Garden, Long Island, all that stuff, New York was a big hub. We'd go stay in Newark
And drive all the way.
at the airport and just make the pounds,
got it. Yeah.
right? So you could stay in one place.
Yeah.
So we went back. We all had dinner together at this diner and stuff like that. And we were all like, well, that was crazy what just happened and all that shit. And, big moment. So the next day I'm off. The next day I'm driving up. I lived in New Hampshire at the time, driving back up. And as soon as I get home, there's a message from Vince's office, his secretary, saying, Vince would like to see you first thing in the morning tomorrow. And I'm like, fuck. Like, this isn't going to be good. Like, he ain't calling to go like, dude, wonderful job. Like, it's my day off. I got to I got to go there. So I like literally turn around, drive all the way back, go back to the office the next day. And this is the meeting where like everybody's freaking out. And Vince was even putting it on. I wasn't so sure that he was upset with it. Everybody else. And you have to understand, all the producers and agents backstage that help with the show and everything are a generation before ours. So they're of the generation of protect the business at all costs. Bad guys don't ride with good guys, right?
Yeah.
To some degree. They all go nuts when they see this. And now Kevin's leaving, Scott's leaving, and to those producers and agents, well, look, it looks bad for Vince. It looks like the inmates are running the asylum, and he doesn't have control over these guys. This group, the clique, is doing whatever they want, and they spit right in your face. And if you don't do something, it looks bad. It's a disrespectful type thing. And I don't think Vince took it that way, but I think that's what he was. He always had a saying: "Perception is reality," and perception amongst them was this, and. So, as soon I knew, I wasn't sure. I'm like, well, I'm either going to get fired or this is going to be like, I'm going to get like, this is going to be heavy. And,
what a drive from New Hampshire.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I was, I was kind of like, well, it is what it is. Right?
Okay.
And I'm a big believer in, like, if you're going to do something that in your mind, is kind of fucked up, like, you cannot cry afterwards with whatever comes about from it. Like, you made the decision to do it. So if the ramifications of that are way worse than you thought, well, that's on you.
It is what it is.
You made the choice. So, it's a pretty heavy meeting, and Vince is like, look, it's unfair. It's all these things, but Kev's leaving, Scott's leaving. I can't do anything to them. Kid wasn't there, but Shawn was there, but he's the WWE champion. Like,
Shawn Michaels is the champ. Can't punish the champ.
There's not much I can do to him.
So you're like, I guess we call it a wash, right? We just move on, huh?
And and he was like, well, here's the thing. A lot of people are saying I should fire you. And I'm like,
what if we could create a nice world where a problem is resolved before it even becomes one? Okay,
what are you saying? And he said, I don't want to fire you. I think you're incredibly talented. I want you here, but I've got to do something. And so he goes, you were going to win King of the Ring. That's going to go away. You were going to do this program with Shawn. That's going to go away.
Damn.
You are going to, and this is one of Vince's favorite sayings, but this was the time when he said it to me when it hit the hardest. He said, you are going to have to learn to eat platefuls of shit and like the taste of it.
Damn.
And, okay. And I said, so the one thing, I was accepting of it. Obviously it hit hard, but I was accepting of it. And I said to him before I left, I said, because he said, but if you want to leave, he said, I understand. This is not all on you. If you want to leave, if you think you can get a job with Turner with those guys, if you want to leave, I understand that. I'll make it where there's a loophole in your contract.
Oh, that's decent.
And you can get out.
Did you consider it?
No, I didn't. I didn't want. I had come from there.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So before I came in, so I kind of knew, even though it had risen dramatically and their business had gone through the roof, I was like, I don't want to be there. I'm here for a reason. This is the place where they can make me.
What felt better? What felt different?
They didn't have a clue what they were doing there.
Okay.
And it was literally the inmates running the asylum. And I knew that, like, you knew you had a boss right here. You knew that there was one place to get the final answer from, and that it came from one place. And that sometimes that's all you need, is whether you like the decision or you don't, you need somebody to make a decision. It can't be, well, I think this, and then you go to this guy and he's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And he's got some kind of creative control, but this other guy's got creative control too. And it's just a mess, right? It's a mess. So one of the things I said to Vince was, I said, I don't want to leave. I said, but if I have no choice, then, well, that's what I have to do. But I said, let me just ask a question. I said, I did the crime. I'll take all the punishment, but I have to know, is there a point where this ends? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? I'm willing to go through all the shit. I'm willing to take it. I'm willing to do the time for what I did, but I got to know there's an end point on it. If you say to me, I can't get out of this, then I got to go. But if you say to me, no, it'll be a period of time, and then you'll get the opportunity, as long as I'm still delivering to where you feel like I deserve that opportunity. If I can get that opportunity, then I stay. And he said, as far as I'm concerned, there's no issue with me. He said, as far as I'm concerned, when you walk out that door of my office, it's over. It's all done, and you're on flat ground with me. He said, but I gotta, for a period of time, I gotta put this out to everybody else that you're fucked. And then once Once I feel like that's been enough, then as long as you're still delivering, you get the opportunity to come back up.